I'm dead ready for a dead reckoning. Let's talk about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass. I'm here to talk to you about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is coming to theaters on June 12th, 2023. As you can imagine, it's the first part in a two-part Mission Impossible magnum opus, a gigantic Mission Impossible movie that has implications for everything. That's why it's called Dead Reckoning. That's why it's two parts. This one is 160 minutes and it's only part 1. So, is it worth it? Is this movie going to bring everyone back to the cinemas? Well, my hot take is, I think you should watch it, although I was a little bit up in the air. I think overall, look, it's a good movie to watch in theaters. It has some really great action. It has a twisting Mission Impossible style plot, and there is a lot to like about it. But it is also very dense and very long. But overall, look, like this is a movie that is fun to see in theaters. It's got some really big effects. It's got some really big set pieces. It is definitely a movie that is entertaining for that time, but it is a very long time. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and go into the ending. And as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in the film, you don't want to know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off when I get to the ending section. Before that, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free, and I'll let you know when I get to the spoilers. So, like I said, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. As Tom Cruise reprising his role as Ethan Hunt, he is on the hunt for this strange artifact. Every country in the world is looking for it, as well as a new entity / threat that emerges in this movie. It is a race to get this thing because what it has could unlock like essentially limitless power for whichever entity gets it first. And as you can imagine, Ethan Hunt is trying to get there first with his group of IMF operators. Will they get there in time? Will they not? Well, you don't really know because this is part 1. We still have to wait for part 2, but it is a long, interesting journey along the way. So, things I liked about this movie. The first, look, it is a tense film. There's a lot of tense moments as Ethan Hunt and the rest of the team are trying to figure out what to do, what these new clues mean, where to go next. And it's a movie that is going to have some moments that are going to cause you to hold your breath. And rightfully so. There are some really big, important, impactful moments for not only Ethan and his team, but, essentially the entire world. Second thing I love, look, the action. This is a action-heavy movie. You've got gunplay, you've got hand-to-hand action, you've got weapons combat. There is a lot going on in this movie. There's a really good car chase scene. There is a lot to like about what this movie brings. And it's definitely a movie that you kind of want to see in theaters because of the big action. And especially, so I saw it in Dolby, and those rumble seats add another dimension. If you can see it in a premium format with something that rumbles, you get a lot of it. There is a lot of big moments. There's a lot of kind of like loud, impactful things that happen. And having that overall immersive experience was definitely a treat. The third thing I love, look, like this is just kind of I don't know, like a Tom Cruise hallmark, but I call it spare no expense. This is definitely a movie that kind of went all out in every department. The action was over the top. There's a car chase scene where things just get destroyed left and right, and you can just tell that there is so much that is going into this movie to kind of bring it to the big screen and to bring it kind of the way it should be seen. It doesn't seem like there's got to be some CG effects, but it doesn't seem like there's that many. It seems like a lot of the effects are practical. A lot of the effects are kind of done right and done in a way that is going to be exciting for moviegoers, and that is definitely a plus when you're trying to get people to go see this over 2.5-hour movie. And the last thing I love, look, it's funny. Like, there's a lot of good, funny situational moments in the film that will kind of break up the tension. Like I said, it's a very tense movie, but there are definitely kind of like Mission Impossible, like asides here and there to let you laugh at certain moments. There's some kind of like almost like self-deprecating humor at times where they kind of understand the Mission Impossible formula and kind of poke fun at it. There are some moments that are just kind of like funny because of the situation that happens, because of like the situation that Ethan Hunt is put in and what he has to do. There's just a lot of like really funny moments, not like crazy laugh out loud moments, but enough to kind of break up the tension and give you a little respite from the action itself. So that being said, lots of positive things. Things I didn't love as much. The first, it is very dense, especially the first bit. Like, I was almost having trouble keeping track of everything going on because there's a lot of information that is given to you right at the start to set the stage, figure out what this thing is, figure out like why people want it, figure out who the players are, and then introduce new players. It is a very, very dense movie at the start, and it is tough to follow at the very start. It's kind of tough to follow throughout, but that's kind of a Mission Impossible movie with the plot twists and things that happen. But just know it is going to be a dense introduction back into this world. Second thing I didn't love as much, look, it is pretty long. Like, look, it's 160 minutes. That is a long movie by any stretch, and it's only part 1. There is a lot happening. There's a lot of scenes I feel like they could have been shortened, but you know what? They paid the money to make these really long, elaborate action sequences, and they are going to put them on screen. And also, look, like, I guess you want to think price performance. For a movie ticket, you get a 2 hour and 40-minute movie. That is a pretty good price performance overall. So it is, just know that it is a movie that is going to take some time to watch. The last thing I didn't love as much, but it's also kind of a Mission Impossible hallmark. There are some ridiculous things that happen. Like, there is superhuman things that Ethan Hunt does that are impossible to actually do, but you enjoy it because it is a Mission Impossible movie, because Ethan Hunt is a super person, not a real super person, but he is essentially a super person. There are unrealistic moments. There's over-the-top action. Just sit back, enjoy the ride, and you'll have fun. And there's another thing I didn't love as much. There's a certain relationship that gets developed in this movie that is fun for the movie, but at some points also felt ridiculous. So it's kind of a different ridiculousness. It is a ridiculous relationship. But that being said, it does help with the overall movie. So, I guess we can forgive that as well. So, look, overall, a lot of pluses, some biases. It is definitely an entertaining movie. I definitely enjoyed it. It felt long, but I was enjoying the ride along the way. So that's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. It comes to theaters on July 12th, 2023. I'm going to go into the ending now. So if you don't want to know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So like I said, everyone in the essentially world is hunting for this one thing, this one artifact. It is this special cross-shaped key. It's like two keys. This is not the right symbol for that, but they essentially come together to form this uber key. What does this unlock? What is this used for? Well, at the very start, there is this Russian stealth submarine that uses this key to turn on and off its stealth technology, but something hijacks that sub and causes it to blow itself up. You don't know really what it is until a little bit later. Now, we find out that this key unlocks something, and you don't know what that thing actually is until much later in the film. But essentially, everyone's looking for this key because of what it can potentially do. Now, one person has half of the key. That is Faust. Ilsa Faust, who we love, Rebecca Ferguson. She was in a bunch of other Mission Impossible movies. She's back here, and she has one half of this two-part key. Who has the other half? Well, you don't really know, but you do know that Faust is going to try to sell this key to someone else, and that person presumably will have the other half of the key. And when these two keys come together, they kind of authenticate each other to show that they are both legit. When they come together, the gems on the keys light up. So that is how they authenticate. Not the most impressive authentication, but you know what? It works. So Ethan goes and finds Faust in this desert stronghold. It's essentially almost looks like a construction in the middle of the desert. He finds her, but there's some mercenaries there. There's a very exciting action sequence involving a sandstorm, involving a gunfight in a sandstorm where you can't really see what's going on. You can't really see who's who. But as you'd imagine, Ethan and Faust survive. And Ethan is going to use the key that Faust has to try to find the buyer of the other half of the key, to get the two keys together, figure out what it unlocks, figure out why everyone wants it, and then Ethan, in the super Ethan way, is going to make sure that no one gets it, because clearly this is a very dangerous thing. So what you also learn is that the entire intelligence community is after this key. Every single intelligence entity wants this key, and because what they think is this key will unlock this AI that is being created called the Entity. It is an AI that I guess was developed and then went rogue. It hacked into I think Saudi Arabian servers, got a learning algorithm, used that to learn more, become kind of self-sufficient. What we find out much later, much later, is that it was originally developed by the CIA to covertly break into various nations' infrastructure. It would go in, hack, do what it needs to do, and then get out. It was meant to be untraceable. It would be able to break into any communication system, get the information, get out. At some point, it broke into, I think, Saudi Arabia's servers and got some sort of learning algorithm, which caused it to develop on its own and became essentially self-aware. It was Skynet. It's, all those things. It has become now self-aware, and it is now calling the shots. And unfortunately, no one is safe because it can break into anything digital it can essentially access. So that sub at the very start, we find out that this entity hacked into that sub. I think the CIA sent it in there to just kind of break in, figure out the stealth technology, maybe disable the stealth technology. But the entity decided to do its own thing. It was like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to destroy the sub. So it kind of became sentient, destroyed the sub. That sub sunk, but that entity, that version of the entity, some aspect of it, some aspect of the code is still on that sub, which is now in the middle of, I think, the Bering Strait. It's in the middle, under like an ice field in the Bering Strait at the bottom of the ocean. And that key can unlock that sub that might eventually get some information about this entity, this AI source code that would then allow whichever nation gets it first to either use that source code to take control of the entity or maybe develop their own version of the entity. So that is the big push. That is why everyone is after it. And everyone literally is after it. Ethan uses half of the key to try and draw out the buyer. They find out that the buyer of the key that I guess contracted Faust, or contracted the person that Faust took out to get this key, they were going to meet at the Amsterdam airport for a 30-minute layover, do the transaction, and leave. And when Ethan gets there, there is another person, this thief named Grace, played by Hayley Atwell, and she is a like super thief. She pickpockets the person that's supposed to buy the key. So now Ethan is following her, and they have a very Mission Impossible push and pull relationship where he tells her essentially that, you know, she is way in over her head. She doesn't know what she's getting herself into, and she needs to like give him the key so that they can make this transaction happen, so he can figure out what the buyer is and then kind of complete his mission, and then he will give her a bunch of money that was supposed to be used to buy the key. So a mutual trade, right? Like, he gets the key, he figures out the information. She gets, I think, $4 million in Bitcoin. Hey, not a bad amount. And I think Bitcoin might be on the rise right now, so it just is going to keep going up to the moon, I guess. But as you can imagine, it doesn't go right. It doesn't go according to plan, because there's also a bomb in this airport, and Benji and Luther are there trying to figure out what's happening. Benji goes to defuse the bomb. It is a complicated bomb. It's a tense moment. It almost goes off, but you know what? It's Mission Impossible. They disarm it just at the right time. But in the ensuing like distraction for everyone involved, Grace escapes with the key. She boards a flight to Rome. She's out of there, and Ethan, Benji, and Luther all have to kind of exfil themselves, get out of the situation. But unfortunately for Grace, she gets apprehended in Rome due to an anonymous tip by someone, potentially Ethan. This was Ethan. And so she gets taken to the police station. Now, while she's there, we get introduced to a new person, this person named Gabriel, who is working for the entity. He is like the chosen one of the entity to kind of further its plans on Earth. And so Gabriel seems to kind of know everything, see everything. He at least has knowledge that the entity gives him of what is happening. And so he tries to get there to get the key, but Ethan is already at the station. When Grace gets brought in, Ethan is there posing as her lawyer, and so he helps her again. Now, Ethan, like, the thing I didn't love, like, one of the things that was annoying, is Ethan continues to help Grace. I think because he thinks she's useful, but also he like really seems to want to protect her. She keeps double crossing him left and right throughout this movie, and at some point it got very frustrating because he would keep trusting her and she would keep like double crossing him. Not in like a like assassination way, but you know, there's a scene where he helps her escape, and then she like handcuffs him to a car so that she can escape, and then there's a scene where he like helps take out some people that are fighting her, and then she like pushes them onto him so that he has to fight them both, and she escapes. It just constantly happens, and I was just like, come on, Ethan, at some point stop helping her. He does because of Ethan, but you know what, that was just something that was frustrating throughout. So Grace eventually escapes from this police station, and Ethan follows her. Now, she escapes in a car. She, again, like this instance, used those two people to distract Ethan while she got out first. She escaped in a police car, starts driving. Ethan jumps on a motorcycle, and boop, you have a wonderful car chase. Eventually, Grace's car gets hit by an SUV driven by this like fanatic who is also helping the entity, Paris. She is a fun character. She is just kind of over the top, extreme throughout, and very, very capable. And that forces Grace and Ethan to try to escape together. And this leads to this intense, really, really exciting, really, like I said, spares no expense car chase throughout, I think, Venice, maybe Rome, somewhere in Italy. And eventually Ethan helps Grace escape, and this is when she handcuffs him to a car, and then that is kind of on some tracks when oncoming train is happening. So Ethan has to get out of this. Grace escapes. Ethan magically gets out at the last minute. He is not killed, but again, she like betrays him again to try to escape. So we find out that the ultimate buyer of this artifact was Alana, the White Witch, I think. The White Widow, played by Vanessa Kirby. She's hosting a party where she's going to get this key, and Ethan and Faust decide to go. They're going to force the issue. They're going to try to like get to the bottom of this. They figure all the players will be there, and everyone is. It is a wonderful party. It is a big party. You've got Ethan, you've got Faust. Grace shows up as well, and then you've got Gabriel, who is the like fanatic character. He also shows up, and we find out that Alana is trying to get the key, and then she's going to figure out who she's going to sell it to. Is she going to give it to a nation? Is she going to give it to the entity? Eventually, she decides to support the entity because that is probably the person who is going to have the most power and the most power to give her. Now, Gabriel and Ethan have a past. Now, when the movie first started, you find out that Ethan was originally given the choice to join MI6 because someone close to Ethan was murdered. That person was murdered by Gabriel. But he escaped. Ethan was found with a dead body. They arrested him. He was given the choice to either go to prison or join the IMF. So Gabriel is kind of the reason that Ethan is who he is. So there's definitely a past to Ethan and Gabriel, and it seems like Ethan and Gabriel are going to kind of like come to a head at some point. And now, after that incident, Gabriel is now working for the entity. So he knows a lot. He essentially can like see the future because the entity is calculating all the various probabilities, all the various possibilities of events that are happening, and kind of chooses the most logical ones, the one that is most likely going to happen. So Gabriel is kind of prophetic at times because he knows what is happening. And before he leaves this meeting, after Alana chooses to like give him the key, she doesn't have it yet, but she will get it, and then she essentially will give Gabriel the key at a later time. He says that essentially one person that Ethan cares about is going to have to die. It's either going to be Faust or Grace. At this point, you're like, well, look, like, you know Faust for a long time. She has been helping you a lot. And you clearly like love her. You probably should keep her alive. Grace, you just met. She's fun. We like her, but she keeps betraying you. Grace should probably die. Of course, it's Ethan. He doesn't choose. He says, I'm going to get you. No one's going to die. They all escape from this party. Again, Grace betrays Ethan to escape. And Ethan still is trying to try to get to her. Now, he is using comms with Benji and Luther to try to like navigate to her. And at some point, those comms start to become fuzzy, and then something else takes over. It is imitating Benji's voice. It is giving Ethan instructions, but it's not Benji. What could it be? So, well, the entity seems to have taken over and is now directing Ethan away. So if at some point Ethan gets pulled far away from where Grace is, and he has to fight his way out and run to where Grace is. Now, Grace ends up on this bridge with Gabriel, and they have a fight. Grace is like using knives to try to fight Gabriel. They hold their own. It's a pretty elaborate hand-to-hand fight. Gabriel eventually knocks Grace out, but that is when Faust comes, and she has this sweet cane sword, and so Faust and Gabriel fight. Eventually, Gabriel conquers, although Faust holds her own very well. But Gabriel eventually kills Faust. So I guess the prophecy did come true. One person had to die, and it was Faust. So in a long, kind of really elaborate fight, Gabriel eventually wins. He eventually stabs Faust in the chest. She unfortunately dies on that bridge. Gabriel escapes. Faust is dead. Ethan arrives just a little bit too late. He sees Faust. It is a pretty sad scene. It's a pretty dramatic scene. And it seems like Gabriel was right. One person that Ethan cared for died, and it was Faust. So now Grace is passed out, but the IMF team gets her and proposes this new mission to her. Like, essentially, they give her the choice to join the IMF. Like, she is essentially going to be wanted by all the police agencies. They know who she is. She is going to be hunted. She's never going to go back to her old life. So she can either be on the run, or she can join the Impossible Missions Foundation, or she can join the IMF and essentially become a ghost. She takes the choice to join the IMF, and they come up with this plan to infiltrate the meeting between Alana and whoever's buying the key from her, and try to figure out who's buying the key and what it's going to be used for. Now, they print up a Alana mask for Grace. It's a very elaborate mask. I liked it a lot because, like, It looks just like Vanessa Kirby, but has brown eyes because Grace has brown eyes, whereas Vanessa Kirby has blue eyes. So you can definitely tell when it's Grace Alana and Alana. But I did love that they had that little touch of like her eye color being the same. So unfortunately, the mask machine breaks after printing Alana's mask, and so Ethan doesn't get a mask of like Alana's henchman. He was supposed to go on as well, infiltrate that way. He doesn't get to. I think it was probably because Tom Cruise didn't want to cover up his face for a good portion of the movie, but it also makes for some very exciting activities as Ethan Hunt is trying to get onto that train. So Grace infiltrates, knocks out Alana, has the mask, gets both parts of the key, and is now ready to go meet whoever the buyer is. And during this time, Ethan is trying to get on the train. He has a simple path that he's going to like jump on at this bend in the tracks. But wouldn't you know it, Gabriel's also on the train, and he is going to set this up to failure. He puts the train forward, kills the brake, kills the ability to slow it down. This train is going faster than anyone expected it to. And that means that Ethan missed the jump. So he has to go on this elaborate dirt bike path to try to get back on the train. He ends up on a mountain. This is that scene that you've seen, this amazing Tom Cruise scene where he did the stunt. He essentially jumped off a ramp onto a mountain, pulled a parachute. It is an elaborate stunt. It actually like gave me I felt it in my stomach when he did this jump. It made me nervous. It was definitely an exciting moment. And that is eventually how Ethan gets on the train. But before that, you have Grace as Alana going in, meeting the buyer. And the buyer is, wouldn't you know it, it's Kittredge, the CIA, the head of the CIA, the person who is kind of like also running the Impossible missions. He is the buyer for this AI. He kind of wants to get this so that the CIA can have the entity's power and, you know, and to use it for whatever the CIA does with that kind of power. But as you imagine, there are plots within plots. Also on the train is the director of national intelligence, and he is meeting Gabriel. He wants to kind of form an alliance with the entity. He wants to use the entity's knowledge with his own like ability to marshal the force of the United States to push the United States into like the next, I guess, evolution of warfare, of power, whatever you want to call it. They'll use the entity's ability to use processing with the kind of resources of the United States to essentially become a global power, a true global power. And if people are against that, well, they'll just kind of get pushed out. Now, Gabriel doesn't want that. Gabriel like takes this meeting, but he eventually betrays the director of national intelligence. He doesn't want to make an alliance, and he also doesn't want anyone else to know where this like sub is. So he kills the director of national intelligence, and he also backstabs Paris, the like fanatic who had been helping him. He says in a very kind of like, I don't know, Jesus moment, I guess. He like tells her that, you know, before the end of this, she's going to betray him and like tell Tom Cruise some secrets. And so in order to prevent that, he stabs her. Well, not great for her. She seems to like pass out. But now Gabriel infiltrates this meeting between Grace, Alana, and Kittredge. So Grace is at this meeting with Kittredge. She has the keys. Kittredge is going to pay her some money, and eventually, after like the $100 million payment is about ready to go, she declines it, and she says, "I'll just be happy to know the keys are in the right hand." And then she gets up and leaves. And as this is happening, the real Alana like emerges in the room. Fake Alana is already gone. Kittredge realizes that the keys are gone too, because Grace, as a super thief, was able to kind of like use sleight of hand to get the keys, decline the payment, and try to get out. So now everyone's pursuing fake Grace with the keys, including Gabriel. So now everyone's pursuing fake Alana, including Alana's henchmen. They stop Grace a little bit down in the train and force her to put the key down. She puts the key down. The henchmen are about to shoot her, and that's when Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt, after he did that super jump with a parachute to try to get onto the train, crashes through the side of the train, very painfully probably, but you know, he's fine, and takes out one of the henchmen purely by luck. But you know what? Luck is like mostly skill and a little bit of circumstances, right? Well, so he takes out one of the henchmen, eventually takes out the other one. Grace is safe. Ethan's on the train, but the key, they don't know where the key is because Grace had put it down, and then Ethan crashed through the train. Well, it turns out that Gabriel was there. Gabriel got the key. and now he's leaving. So Ethan sends Grace to go stop the train. Ethan's going to go get Gabriel. It is a long, very, very exciting fight. Essentially, Gabriel gets on top of the train. Ethan's up there too. They fight in a very kind of reminiscent of Mission Impossible 1, where they have to kind of constantly dodge things, dodge low-hanging items. There's a tunnel. It's a nice way. I assume it's a callback to Mission Impossible 1. Eventually, though, their fight is broken up by some agents who have been pursuing Ethan the entire time. They kind of break up the fight. They have a gun trained on him. They essentially say, like, they only want Ethan. They don't care about Gabriel. And Gabriel uses this moment to, like, go off the train to a prearranged drop point, like a truck that is driving by with a soft landing. He glides off the train into that truck, and he escapes with the key, because remember, he grabbed the key before. Ethan is able to escape, tells these agents, like, look, something is going to happen to this train. Everyone needs to get in the back. Ethan goes to the front of the train where Grace already is. She's tried to stop, but she can't, because remember, Gabriel, like, sabotaged the train to make sure it wouldn't slow down. So they realize they have to decouple the train. They do that. They get the train decoupled right before it's about to hit this bridge. And this bridge had some bombs that Gabriel had set up earlier. They go off. The bridge collapses. The engine, the engine falls off the bridge, and the air brakes on the train engage, but unfortunately not well enough. So the train goes a little bit off the bridge, and then that is when the weight of the car starts to pull the train down. And so now you get a really fun, like, Uncharted, I think 2, maybe 3, but I think it's 2 sequence where Ethan and Grace are trying to get up through the train cars as they're, like, slowly falling down. So they are trying to get through the train cars to jump to the next one right at the last moment before that train car falls down. It is a really elaborate sequence. It's a pretty long sequence, but it is fun because there is some variety. You got, like, a kitchen car, then you got, like, a dining car, then you got, like, a lounging car, and each time something else bad happens. Eventually, they are able to get onto a car that is not going to fall off. They're ready to go. Ethan has a spare parachute he's going to get on to get both of them off, but unfortunately, the parachute only is for one person. And I should mention before this, when they were about to, like, fall on the last train, someone grabbed Ethan's hand when it was about to slip, and that was Paris. Paris, the person that Gabriel said was going to betray him, that Gabriel stabbed to stop her from betraying him. Well, she saved Ethan's life because Ethan earlier had spared hers. She pulls him up, and before she dies, she tells him a few things about the key. She tells him the name of the Russian sub and that it's a submarine. And now Ethan knows that the key is related to a Russian sub. Remember, Gabriel had the key. Gabriel escaped. What are they going to do? Well, nope. Ethan was able to pickpocket Gabriel during their fight somehow and get the key. So now Ethan has the key. He has the information of where to go. And he has a means of escape. He has a parachute, but it's only for one person. They can't both escape. Grace tells Ethan to go. Like, he needs to go. He needs to get out of there. She essentially pushes him out of the train as some agents bust through to arrest him. He gets off. He pulls a chute, escapes that way, and eventually glides down to meet Benji. Now, unfortunately for Grace, she now is captured by some agents, and wouldn't you know it, Kittredge is there. But when Kittredge starts talking to her, Grace mentions that Ethan said that I could trust you, and also that you would give me a choice. And she then says that she accepts the choice to join the IMF. So now she is, I guess, a member of the IMF. So I guess she'll probably eventually be linked up with Ethan. But for now, Ethan is with Benji. They're getting ready for the next part of the mission. Luther had left earlier to kind of, like, set up a clean room, set up an analog, like, safe space where he could work on the entity, try to figure out a weakness in the entity. But he had to do it alone. He had to do it away from everyone else because the entity can, like, hack everyone's technology. So he had to set up, like, a very safe space for him to do it. So Luther is on his own. Grace is now with Kittredge. Maybe she'll be kind of activated on her own. Maybe she'll join Ethan. We don't necessarily know. And also Paris, the person that saved Ethan's life and then gave information about the sub, she is also alive. They find a pulse on her. We thought she died, but she's also alive. Gabriel is off doing something. He's planning the next step in this mission. And so that is how Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 ends. Ethan has the key. Ethan has the location. Will he be able to stop Gabriel? Will he be able to stop the entity? Who will get in his way in the next part? Well, we'll have to wait to find out. Look, I think definitely Ethan will try to get to the sub. I don't know how he'll get to the sub, but I'm sure he'll find a way. I'm sure there'll be some sort of supercar or super submarine, hopefully a well-tested submarine. I assume he will get reunited with Grace because they spent a lot of time in this movie establishing the Ethan-Grace relationship, and I think that they will probably get reunited. She seems to trust him finally, although it took a very long time and a lot of backstabbing and a lot of betrayal, and it was very frustrating at times to watch. But you know what? I think at this point they are probably going to be part of a team. And who knows, maybe we'll get some more cameos. Faust is dead. Maybe Paris will join as well now that she is like alive and going to presumably be captured by the IMF. Maybe they'll give her the choice that they gave the other agents. Probably. She'll probably join as well. And so, you know, that will probably be the group that then goes and takes on Gabriel and the entity. Will they succeed? I assume they'll succeed, but we won't know until whenever Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 comes out. And that is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Like I said, it is enjoyable, it is entertaining. It is a long movie, but there are definitely some really fun action moments, some funny humor, and some tense situations as well. So check it out when it comes to theaters on July 12th, 2023. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.